Next on The Real Story, another contender for Congress in Connecticut's 5th District, this time on the Republican side, State Senator Andrew Roraback. He won his party's endorsement at the convention, but 3 challengers emerged with enough support to force a primary. Thanks for being with us.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Al. Lori?
So you have some cash from contributions yourself, but your main opponents on the Republican side, Lisa Wilson-Foley and Mark Greenberg, they also have some cash of their own. And I'm wondering how much you think that is going to play a role in this next month, which, you know, conventional wisdom says is the crucial month before the primary.
Well, the good news for me, Lori, is that since winning the convention in May, I've raised more money than all 3 of my competitors combined. So the support from grassroots Republican voters in terms of the investments they're making in my candidacy has been overwhelmingly positive. Obviously, when people fund their own campaigns, that's a phenomenon that's introduced into politics. But we've all seen in Connecticut that elections are one thing that can't be bought.
Do you think that turns off voters, people investing their own money and certainly piles of it?
No, I mean, this is America, and if people work hard and accumulate a fortune, God bless them. It's their right to spend that money trying to buy a congressional seat or any other kind of seat. But I think people see through that, and they understand that in choosing a candidate, they don't want to choose necessarily the candidate with the most money. They want to choose the candidate who has the values, the work ethic, the demonstrated experience that convinces them that when in Washington, we will represent their values and that we're not looking to buy something, we're looking to earn something.
But right now, you're focusing on showing that you have the values that the Republican Party faithful would like, and there have been questions raised about how fiscally conservative are you really? Raising taxes, they're bringing up. You're raising taxes on business and fuel taxes and so on.
I say to that, Al, poppycock, and anyone who's watched me work as the leading Republican senator on the Finance Committee on the past 4 years knows full well that no one has stood up more strongly against Governor Malloy's record tax increase, against the busway from New Britain to Hartford, against reckless borrowing, overtaxation, excessive spending. In the halls of the Capitol, there's a reason the Senate Republicans chose me to represent them on the tax committee, and that's because they knew I had the skill set to push back against the governor and one-party rule in this state, and that's certainly what the facts reveal and what the voters understand and will continue to understand as this campaign unfolds in the coming weeks.
But you have said that you would agree to some limited tax increases, right, for budget spending cuts.
Well, what I've said is that there are corporate tax loopholes that have outlived their usefulness, and if we close those loopholes, there will be additional revenue for the federal government. But the first order of business must be reducing spending dramatically. In fiscal year 2011, federal tax revenues were 14% of our GDP, and federal expenditures were 25% of our GDP. We are spending way beyond our ability to afford it, and that's why Connecticut needs a Republican member of Congress to bring some of the fiscally conservative values that most people have here in this state to the nation's capital.
Well, on the social side, though, your views are prominent in the area of pro-choice. You are pro-choice, and now it seems like in many quarters that would mean an automatic disqualifier, and yet you won the party's nomination.
Well, I think that the Republican Party has to be a big tent. If we want to win elections in Connecticut, we have to welcome people whose views on social issues run the spectrum. I mean, the reality is, Al, that I'm a Connecticut Republican, a New England Republican. That's the voice which is conspicuous by its absence in the national debate. It's desperately needed, and that's what I'm looking to bring to the halls of Congress on behalf of the people of the 5th District.
And how do you do that here in this blue state? How are you going to get this seat back for the GOP?
Well, the reality is Republicans will not choose the next member of Congress. Democrats will not choose the next member of Congress. The next member of Congress will be chosen by the 45% of voters in this district who are unaffiliated voters. And in my elections to the state Senate, I've been able to win not just with my Republican base, but also by appealing to the great mainstream of unaffiliated voters, and they're the ones who will make all the difference in November.
Do you think there's an increasing number of people in that unaffiliated area who now are more strongly in favor of controlling spending and reducing taxes?
No question. I think so many Americans have buyer's remorse We all wished President Obama well when he was inaugurated. If he succeeded, our country would succeed. And I don't know anyone that didn't want to see our country succeed. But here we are 3 years after he took the reins, and our country is in worse shape than when he started. So I think that the people in the middle think, and this will bear out at the polls in November, we need something different for Connecticut. We need a Republican who will be in the majority caucus in Washington, who will have an opportunity to shape policy to benefit our state. And I'm convinced that the president's poor performance is going to drive unaffiliated voters to look very closely at the Republican candidate. And if I'm that candidate, I'm confident I can win their support.
While you're here, we wanted to talk about, you had been very outspoken during the last legislative session about the early release program for prisoners. Some people criticized you, saying that because you tied it to your vote on the death penalty repeal, seemed a little convenient, but you did actively and aggressively push for the repeal of this early release program. And I'm wondering now, in light of what's happened, you're saying what?
Well, Lori, I objected to this program when it was passed in May of 2011 in the dark of night by a Democratic legislature without the benefit of a public hearing and over the objections of the Commissioner of Corrections, who said we should only do an early release program for non-violent offenders. What the governor and the Democrats pushed through to save money at the expense of public safety was an early release program which allowed serial rapists, child molester, repeat drunk drivers who had killed innocent people to be given good time credit retroactively for 5 years. And I think everyone knew it was just a matter of time before one of these people who was released before they were supposed to be released did something terrible. And my heart goes out to the family in Meriden who is suffering the consequences of the irresponsible action taken by the legislature. And I hope that next year the legislature will see fit to repeal this program and make sure something like this doesn't happen again.
Do you think they will? I mean, I know there's already a proposal to add to the list of crimes for which this program does not qualify inmates, crimes such as robbery and some of these other really violent crimes. So it sounds like it's going to be fixed.
Well, it never should have been passed in the first place. Once it was passed, it was clear that victims felt like they had been victimized a second time. Mm-hmm. When victims heard from the Department of Corrections... You mean
when they didn't serve out their full
sentences?
That's
correct, because plea bargains were centered around a representation that the offender would serve a certain period of time. Then these victims got letters from the Department of Corrections saying, sorry, you thought the person that killed your child was going to serve 20 years, but they're going to be out after 17. The victims rightfully were outraged, felt re-victimized, and we owe it to them to reverse this policy and bring integrity back to our sentencing system.
But what about the argument that some people make that you have to provide some sort of incentive for people who are in prison to take classes or participate in programs that will help them rehabilitate, and the incentive is some time off, and that they still go before the probation board?
Well, what the Commissioner of Corrections, who is Teresa Lance, the smartest commissioner we've ever had, in my opinion, she said you have to start this program with non-violent offenders and see if it works. We did the worst of all things. Not only did we pass this program and allow violent offenders to take advantage of it, we applied it retroactively, 5 years. So people were given months of good time early release credit without having even officially earned it. So I think it's an outrageous policy. And
a quick yes or no answer. Will you, if you're a member of Congress, vote to repeal Obamacare?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
There you are.
Good.
Andrew Roraback, thank you for being with us.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Up next, Republicans are outraged, saying the state's early release program let out yet another now accused killer. We were just talking about that. We'll hear from them and have the state's response to growing concerns about the program's perceived risks.